The first time I lit up, I was just 16, a terrified knot of insecurity, wrapped in oversized clothes. I craved the approval of the older crew, the ones who lounged behind the rusty bleachers at the skate park, exhaling slow, knowing clouds. It wasn't about the taste, it was wretched, like inhaling a mixture of burning chemicals and damp paper, but about the instant acceptance. That tiny white cylinder became my passport to the world of adults, the rebels, the untouchables. I felt a rush of sharp, deceptive calm, a temporary shield against every fear and failure I carried. My hiding rituals started immediately and became my first art form. My clothes reeked, a constant stale reminder of my secret. I became obsessed with laundry, cycling through cheap shirts, dousing myself in overwhelming cologne, and constantly chewing gum until my jaw ached. I'd spray my fingers with deodorant before touching a doorknob, paranoid that the scent would linger. I told myself, I'll only do this on weekends, just one or two. It's a temporary experiment, a curiosity. That lie didn't even make it through the month. The addiction tightened its grip with chilling speed. Soon, I was stealing crumpled bills from my mom's purse, justifying the theft by thinking, she won't miss this $10. She has plenty. The fear of getting caught, that crushing weight of failure in front of my parents, was intense, but it was nothing compared to the crippling, throat-closing terror of running out. If I was down to 3 cigarettes, my entire body would buzz with anxiety. I was 17, standing outside the school entrance, 5 minutes late for the final history exam that determined my passing grade. I had planned a quick smoke after lunch, but the lunch period had been chaotic, and I ran out of time. I felt the sharp, cold edge of withdrawal. My hands were visibly shaking. I couldn't focus on the geometry of the cigarette in my hand, let alone the dates of World War I. I tried to walk into the school, but the withdrawal was like a physical wall. My head spun, my stomach cramped, and a voice screamed in my mind, "If you go in now, you'll shake and fail. You need the calm." I looked at the clock, then at the entrance, then back at the half-finished cigarette. The test felt like a mountain I couldn't climb without the crutch. With a deep, sickening lurch in my stomach, I turned my back on the school and walked away. I faked a terrible stomach bug with a croaking phone call to my mom an hour later. That day, I skipped the huge history test and failed the class, sacrificing a vital part of my future for a few minutes of nicotine calm. It was the first time my addiction chose smoke over my success, and the ease with which I made that choice was the most terrifying realization. I hadn't just made a mistake. I had prioritized my poison over my entire trajectory. By the time I started college, smoking was not a choice. It was my demanding, constant shadow. My non-smoking friends, tired of the smell and the constant, unbelievable excuses. I have bronchitis. I just passed a barbecue pit. Drifted away. My social circle shrank only to other smokers and people who were too lost in their own problems to care about mine. I'd stand in the freezing rain, huddled in the alley behind the dorm, wasting precious study time just for 5 minutes of chemical relief. Every day was a complex, paranoid calculation. How much money do I have left for food versus cigarettes? How many cigarettes are in the pack? How long until my next fix? The simple rhythm of normal life and breathing was totally replaced by the stressful, demanding rhythm of the next smoke. The craving was a physical, screaming presence inside me. In my sophomore year, I met Sarah in a study group. She was the absolute opposite of the gray life I was building, radiant, healthy, and genuinely happy. She ran track, volunteered at the local hospital, and smelled like soap, clean air, and mint, a scent that felt like a painful accusation to my stale smell. She was everything I wasn't, and I loved her deeply. But that love was immediately built on a foundation of constant, paralyzing lies. I created an entire secret life, a complex web of precise excuses and timing. I started leaving my apartment 15 minutes early just to have a frantic, quick smoke before meeting her, changing my shirt in my car, and chewing industrial-strength gum until the inside of my mouth was raw. I even bought a pair of cheap plastic gloves to wear while smoking, convinced it would stop the smell from clinging to my skin. The stress of maintaining the lie, constantly checking the wind direction, avoiding hugs, making up fake errands, was worse than the addiction itself, but I couldn't stop either the lie or the habit. I walked on eggshells all the time, terrified that one false move would shatter the beautiful reality I'd built with her. One night, Sarah stayed over at my place. I woke up at 3 a.m., drenched in cold sweat. I hadn't smoked since 9 p.m., and the craving was a monster chewing on my stomach. I carefully slid out of bed, praying the old bed frame wouldn't squeak. I tiptoed to the bathroom, turned the shower on full blast, hot water and maximum steam, to create a smoke screen and absorb the smell, and locked the door. I had a cigarette hidden deep inside a hollowed-out tube of toothpaste. I stood there, fully clothed, while the bathroom filled with blinding steam, and frantically smoked the cigarette down to the filter, flicking the ash directly into the running water of the toilet. When it was done, I gargled with mouthwash until I almost choked, scrubbed my hands with abrasive soap until they were red, and stood in the actual hot shower, fully clothed, for 5 minutes, hoping the steam would neutralize the residue clinging to my hair. When I crept back to bed, shivering and exhausted, Sarah turned over and murmured, "You okay, honey? You were gone a long time." I lied that I had a terrible bout of stomach flu. She cuddled closer to me, and the intimacy of her innocent belief felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I had risked everything, her trust, a pipe bursting, setting off the smoke alarm, for a 5-minute fix. We decided to celebrate our 2-year anniversary with a romantic weekend trip to a quiet cabin by a beautiful lake, a place meant for peace and reflection. We drove for 4 hours, listening to music and talking about our future. About 30 minutes from the cabin, I realized I'd forgotten my large, emergency carton of cigarettes hidden under clothes in the back of my closet. I was instantly paralyzed. My hands started to sweat so much the steering wheel was slick. My heart sped up, pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a pure, physical protest. I could feel the cold, sharp panic rising in my throat, cutting off my air. "We have to turn back right now, Sarah," I blurted out, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white and aching. Sarah frowned, puzzled, pulling her attention from the passing scenery. "What?" "We're almost there, Alex. Did you forget your phone, your wallet? What's so important?" "No, I forgot my specialized allergy medicine, the prescription kind. I can't risk it, Sarah. It's a very remote area. I could have a terrible, life-threatening allergic reaction and end up really sick, or worse. I need to get it." She turned to face me fully, her expression shifting from puzzlement to deep, unsettling hurt. "Allergy medicine? Alex, you haven't taken allergy medicine in 2 years. And you're shaken, violently. Your hands are slick. You look pale, almost green. Are you sure you're okay? Are you lying to me about something bigger?" I exploded, needing to shift the focus away from the devastating, immediate truth. "Why are you always questioning me? I told you I need it. Are you accusing me of something? Fine, I'll go back alone and you can wait here. But if I end up in the emergency room because you wanted to save 30 minutes of driving time, that's entirely on you. I'm responsible for my own health." We turned around. I drove us 4 hours back to the city in absolute, agonizing silence. The tension was thick and suffocating, far worse than any smoke I could have inhaled. We never talked about that trip again, and we never rescheduled it. That was the day she started truly looking at me, seeing not a loving boyfriend, but a selfish, volatile, and deeply untrustworthy stranger. A year after the ruined trip, we were engaged. The trust was paper thin, held together only by my desperate, tearful promises of being clean. I swore I had quit forever, but I was still sneaking out to smoke during late shifts at the office, rushing back in, desperate and paranoid that a security camera had captured my betrayal. At our engagement party, in front of all our friends and Sarah's entire family, I felt the familiar, crippling urge. Managed to sneak outside to the back patio, claiming I needed to take an important call for work. I was hastily lighting up, feeling the instant relief flood my nervous system, when Sarah's younger sister, Lisa, a pre-med student, walked around the corner to get some ice. She froze. I froze. The glowing cherry of the cigarette was hanging in the darkness. "Alex," she whispered, her eyes wide with shock and a sudden sharp anger. "You said you quit. Sarah told everyone you quit for good." I jammed the cigarette behind my back and lied with an ice-cold precision that scared even me. "Lisa, please. It's not what it looks like. This is Mike's. He asked me to hold it for him. He's inside. You know he smokes heavily. Don't tell Sarah. It would break her heart, especially tonight." Lisa, young and deeply protective of her sister, looked at me, then at my shaking hand, then back at the half-smoked cigarette hidden behind me. The suspicion was heavy in her gaze, but the sight of my panic and the fear of ruining the night made her hesitate. She finally just nodded slowly, her face etched with doubt. "I won't tell her," she said, her voice strained. "But you're a monster if you keep lying to her, Alex. You'll ruin her." The accusation hit me harder than any physical blow. I finished the cigarette in 2 frantic drags and felt nothing but self-loathing. I was an active villain in my own life. The final explosion happened one simple Tuesday night, a week before we were supposed to send out the wedding invitations. I was driving us home, and I couldn't find my phone charger in the dark car. I was searching blindly in the glove compartment when my hand hit a hard, familiar pack. A pack of unfiltered, cheap cigarettes I thought I'd tossed out months ago. I saw the pack at the exact moment Sarah saw my hand frantically snatch it away. Her face became a mask of cold emptiness and profound, sickening realization. "What is that, Alex?" Her voice was so quiet, it was scary. A low, dangerous rumble that promised irreversible destruction. I panicked and jammed the pack deep into my jeans pocket. "It's nothing, Sarah. Just old trash. Why are you always digging through my stuff? You clearly don't trust me at all, do you? You're making things up." "I'm not making things up. I'm not digging through your stuff. I'm trying to find a charger. And I don't trust you because you constantly make it impossible to trust you," she roared, instantly losing her careful, polite calm. "I smell it on your breath in the morning. When you think I'm asleep, I hear you cough deep in the morning, like you're choking on dirt and cement. I smell the fear and the stale smoke on your coat every time I come near you. You swore on our wedding, on our future, that you quit. But you're a liar, Alex. You are still poisoning yourself, and by extension, poisoning this relationship and me." I felt trapped, useless, and consumed by shame, which erupted into a hot, blinding rage fueled by years of internal conflict. "It was only one, Sarah. I had a massive crisis at the office today. A client disaster. I needed to calm down. Are you constantly going to hold a magnifying glass over my life and judge my every second? You are constantly suffocating me. You treat me like I'm a child I have to sneak around. You act like a child who needs sneaking around, she screamed, the tears now thick and fast, blurring her vision. It's not one cigarette. It's 1,000 lies and a lifetime of broken promises. I look at you, and I don't see the man I love. I only see the smoke that matters more than me. That habit is your wife, Alex. I can't compete with smoke, and I absolutely refuse to share my life with it. She ripped the tiny, beautiful diamond ring from her finger. She didn't throw it. She placed it carefully on the dashboard, where the streetlights made it sparkle, a final, gleaming monument to what we had lost. The man I planned to marry is dead. He was murdered by smoke and selfishness. I can't marry a habit, and I can't marry a lie. She opened the door, got out, and walked away into the dark street without looking back. The sound of the car door slamming shut was the loudest, most final sound I've ever heard. It was the sound of my future snapping shut forever, and I knew, deep down, I deserved it. I fell apart with terrifying speed. Sarah was gone, my concentration was zero, and within 2 months, I was fired from my stable office job for chronic tardiness, poor performance, and an openly hostile attitude. I didn't even fight it. I just nodded and walked out to light a celebratory cigarette for my newfound freedom. I moved into a messy, cheap apartment, sharing rent with a guy named Leo, who just played video games and never cleaned. The apartment became a dark cave, smelling of stale pizza, body odor, and permanent ash. My only activities were working 2 miserable, low-wage jobs and chain smoking. I was desperate, miserable, and financially ruined, spending nearly half my income just to keep the addiction fed. About 9 months after the breakup, an old college friend, Mark, tracked me down. He was clean, successful, and genuinely worried, showing up unannounced with a bag of groceries and a binder full of quitting resources. I was defensive, paranoid, and high-strung, hating the light he brought into my dark cave. "Alex, look at this place. Look at you," Mark pleaded, his voice soft but firm, gesturing at the filth and the endless piles of butts. "I know this addiction is the only reason you're here. We are going to get rid of every single one of these things, and we're starting fresh right now. I'll stay with you for the first week, I promise." He walked straight to the kitchen table, where I had 3 fresh, open packs, sitting next to a dirty, overflowing ashtray, and grabbed them. I snapped, the rage of the withdrawal instantly overshadowing the possibility of hope. "Don't touch those. Get your hands off my stuff," I roared, pushing him with a sudden, violent force I didn't know I had. He stumbled back against the wall, shocked. "Alex, stop. I'm trying to save your life," he shouted, throwing the packs into the sink and turning on the faucet, soaking the tobacco. I didn't think. I lunged at him, grabbing his arm and squeezing with all my might, my eyes blind with insane rage. "You don't get it. This is the only thing I have left. The only thing that stops the screaming, the panic, the emptiness in my head." We wrestled violently, knocking over a chair, shattering a cheap lamp, and spilling sour milk across the floor. It wasn't about the cigarettes anymore. It was about protecting the only control I had left, the single thing that kept the pain away. Mark finally shoved me back, stared at me with pure sadness and fear, and said, "I can't save you from yourself, buddy. Not like this. You chose the addiction over me, too." He walked out and never called again. I stood there, panting, surrounded by debris and soaked, ruined tobacco, and felt a moment of raw, ugly triumph, followed immediately by the crushing weight of being utterly and completely alone. I had a terrible day at my dishwashing job. My boss yelled at me. I was sick with a cold, and I was completely broke. Literally $0 for a pack. The closest store was half a mile away. The withdrawal started almost instantly, turning my stomach to acid and making my ears ring. I walked through the streets like a ghost, eyes darting, desperate. I saw a delivery man leaving his truck open while carrying boxes into a convenience store. My mind went blank. All that mattered was the screaming need. I crept up to the unattended truck, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, convinced someone was watching. My hands shaking so badly I could barely open the door, I snatched a $20 bill from the center console and sprinted away, not stopping until I was 3 blocks away, gasping for breath, the lungs I was actively killing, screaming with the effort. I bought a pack, lit up, and felt the warm, toxic relief flow into my veins. As the calm came, so did the crushing shame. I had just committed a crime, risked jail time, and become a thief, all for a disposable piece of paper and tobacco. I wasn't just ruined, I was now dangerous. A few months later, I was truly hitting rock bottom. I hadn't eaten a real meal in 3 days, but I had smoked 4 packs a day. The thought of my life, my health, and Sarah came back to me, an overwhelming wave of self-hatred. I felt a sudden, fierce, animalistic urge to fight back one last time. I stood up, gathered every single cigarette I owned, the crushed ones under the couch, the half-packs in my jacket, the entire fresh carton. I piled them on the kitchen counter. With a desperate, choking animal roar, I picked up a frying pan and started smashing them. I pulverized them into a foul-smelling dust, mixing it with the greasy residue on the counter. I swore, I cried, and I screamed that I was done. For 18 agonizing hours, I was clean. The withdrawal was like an electric storm inside my body. I was soaking wet, shaking violently, and overwhelmed by a black fury that made me punch the wall until my knuckles were bloody and swollen. Around 2 a.m., I woke up screaming, desperate, shaking so hard my teeth chattered, they felt like they would crack. The screaming need for nicotine was unbearable. I remembered the little bit of tobacco dust mixed with ash and grease on the kitchen counter. I crawled out of bed, got down on my hands and knees, and started frantically licking the foul, gritty dust off the counter like a sick, starved dog. I swallowed the filthy, gritty powder, gagging and sobbing, just to get a microscopic amount of nicotine into my system. That moment, crawling on my kitchen floor, desperate for poison, was when I knew I had truly broken every bond of sanity and self-respect. I finally managed to get an interview for a low-level manager position at a warehouse. This was my one final way out. I wore my wrinkled suit and arrived early, trembling with nerves and the anticipation of the fix I'd delayed. I tried to wait, but my body didn't care about my job. I was standing by the water cooler in the silent, cold lobby, trying to slow my breathing, when it hit me. The worst panic attack yet. A wave of lightheadedness, then my heart started hammering against my ribs, hard and fast, like a machine trying to break free. My hands started to tremble so badly I dropped the plastic cup. I truly thought I was having a heart attack right there. I couldn't get a full breath, feeling a terrifying, clawing pressure in my chest. The world went hazy. I ran into the restroom, splashing cold water on my face, gasping for air. Just as the panic started to fade, a new, worse horror took over. I doubled over the sink, seized by a cough so deep and powerful, it felt like my entire ribcage was snapping. It was a terrifying, wet, rattling sound that went on, tearing at my throat. I coughed until my vision blurred, and I saw only black spots and flashes of white light. When the fit finally ended, I was weak, wheezing, and covered in cold sweat. I looked down into the white porcelain sink, a glob of thick, dark phlegm sat there, stained clearly and shockingly with bright red, fresh blood. My fear was instant, icy, and absolute. This wasn't a subtle warning anymore. This was my body's final, desperate, fatal scream. The job, the suit, the future, it all instantly meant nothing in the face of this physical reality. I was killing myself, and the damage was visible. Shaking uncontrollably, I washed the blood away, terrified someone would see. I didn't even go back to the lobby. I walked straight out of the building, found the nearest store, bought a fresh pack, and lit up before I even hit the sidewalk. The addiction won, and I gave it everything, including the last chance for a decent life. 5 years later, I had achieved complete ruin. I was genuinely homeless for a few months, sleeping in my beat-up car until it was finally repossessed and towed. Then I bounced between dirty couches and shelters. I was constantly sick, had no savings, and the only steady relationship I had was with the cigarette in my hand. My world was small, gray, and limited to the distance between a park bench and the nearest gas station. I turned 35, but my body felt 65. The simple act of walking up the 5 short steps to a friend's apartment felt like running a marathon with heavy weights strapped to my chest. The feeling of not getting enough air, the hungry, suffocating panic, was a constant, heavy blanket that never lifted. I was often wheezing even while sitting down, unable to hold a normal conversation without pausing to drag air in. I was working at a fast food counter, my last job. It was a busy Saturday lunch rush. I was hurrying from the fry station to the register when the dizziness hit. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, and the suffocating feeling of the air being thin and watery overwhelmed me. I grabbed the counter, gasping, making a horrible, rattling noise in my chest. The world tilted, and I dropped a tray of hot fries. I fell to my knees, struggling to pull air into lungs that felt like brittle paper bags. The manager, a young kid named Kevin, rushed over. "Dude, are you okay? What's that noise?" he asked, terrified. I couldn't speak. I could only point weakly to my chest, choking out a sound like a dying bird. Kevin called an ambulance. Lying on the cold, greasy floor, surrounded by yelling customers, I watched my manager scoop up the hot fries and calmly tell the line cook to replace them. My life was collapsing in a serious medical emergency, and the immediate concern of the world was just the efficiency of the fast food line. That was my significance now, less important than a tray of fries. The hospital stay was grim. They stabilized me, running endless tests. The doctor's office I visited a week later was quiet, cold, and smelled overwhelmingly of disinfectant, making me feel even sicker. The pulmonary specialist sat me down, his expression heavy with disappointment that cut me deeper than any angry word. "Alex," he said, pointing to the damaged cloudy images on the light box. The X-ray looked more like a ghost than lungs. "The tests show you have severe COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It is severe and irreversible. Your lung capacity is drastically reduced. The tiny air sacs are destroyed. We can slow the progression, but we cannot, under any circumstances, undo the damage." I felt strangely empty and far away, like I was watching a documentary about a failure who wasn't me. "What exactly does that mean for the rest of my life, doctor?" "It means you must stop smoking today," he repeated, his voice firm and final, cutting through the haze of my denial. "No exceptions. If you light up another cigarette, you won't make it to 40, and for the rest of your life, you will need help breathing. You are 35. This is the consequence of your choice." He showed me the small, clear plastic tube, the nasal cannula, that would sit under my nose, connected by a long trailing tube to a bulky, humming oxygen machine. This machine, he explained, would be my constant companion. I had thrown away my freedom, my money, my health, and my love for a chemical that ultimately chained me to an oxygen concentrator. I had traded the promise of a long life for a short, agonizing one, spent gasping for air. As I left the doctor's office, awkwardly carrying the heavy, clunky oxygen tank over my shoulder, I caught my reflection in the hospital lobby window. I saw a defeated, gray-skinned man, his shoulders slumped, with a clear plastic tube running up to his nose, his lungs fighting desperately for every tiny gasp of air. The man in the reflection was not tough or cool. He was pathetic, trapped, and terrified. I looked outside, where a young couple, they looked exactly like Sarah and me a decade ago, were laughing as they hurried past, full of energy and health. They looked so healthy, so vibrant, so free. Just as they passed, a woman walking a small dog stopped right in front of the window, lit a cigarette, and took a deep, careless drag. The sight of the smoke made my lungs seize up, and the oxygen machine hissed louder, fighting to compensate for the sudden panic. I finally saw the truth. I hadn't lost my life in one big disaster. I lost it slowly, meticulously, day by day, with every disposable cigarette. I lost my love, my career, my health, and my very ability to walk without assistance, all because the smoke mattered more than I mattered to myself. Now sitting alone in a cheap, sterile rented room, permanently tethered to the constant, weary hiss of the oxygen concentrator, I understand the final, heavy price. The cool, tough image I chased at 16 is gone. All that remains is the choking gray mist of my ruined life, counting down the days until the air runs out.